Welcome to Busted Speakers, I'm Ed.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Cam.
And today we're going to be reviewing the third album by the Bristol-based punk outfit IDLES, which is titled Ultra Mono. This band has been making waves in the indie music scene and the punk scene since about 2018 with their album Joy is an Act of Resistance, for basically channeling an old-school punk energy into progressive political ideals and such. But we'll get into that when we get into the actual review. Let's just say our general thoughts first, starting with Cam.
Alright, so I believe I'm the one of us with zero exposure to IDLES before this. So, I had no idea what to expect coming into this. So, that kind of puts me in a bit of an advantage. Well, it's like an advantage and a disadvantage because I had no expectations. But then I was hearing people saying that this is, a major step down from their first two, so I didn't have that burden to worry about. But at the same time, that means I can't accurately compare it to their first two records. But I can just talk about it on its own, and it's a bit more aggressive than I usually like my punk. Not really so much hardcore type punk fan. But it definitely took until at least the second listen for me to get on this album's wavelength. But after I did, I started understanding what they're about, their sense of humor and their ideology and that sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing I would say is objectionable here. I didn't even think it was a problem that they're a little simplistic with their messages. I mean, it's punk adjacent. What else do you expect? I don't think anyone turns to punk music for deep insight. It's just, hey, this is wrong. We should do something about it. Most of the time.
Yeah, if I can just interject for a second, I kind of agree. I can see where people are coming from with this record because it definitely doubles down on that approach compared to their previous work, which was already simplistic and upfront and blunt about what it was trying to get across. I just think it's less of a focus here. I don't know, people seem to be gauging this album's quality as though it's a series of essays and not a series of very simple and upfront punk songs. And I don't know if that's because of, the state of the world right now. I've seen a lot of energy from people that basically equates to, is this really what people need in 2020? And it's no. I don't think any band is capable of providing what the world needs right now. But the way I see it is it's a very accessible stepping stone into these ideologies. And like you say, there's not really anything objectionable here. There's maybe a blunt sense of humor to the album that's going to go over some people's heads or not, agree with their tastes. But yeah, there's nothing objectionable here in terms of what they're trying to get across.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even get the thing about do we really need this in 2020? Because it's not like this is, something controversial in a bad way, like that My Favorite Martian or whatever that group is, from way back when. This isn't, transphobic techno or whatever it is.
Yeah, good old Ray William Johnston, childhood heroes, I bet.
God.
So yeah, it is a bit more aggressive than I like, as I was saying, but once I got into the groove with it, I could vibe with it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I've heard Brutalism before, and obviously haven't heard their second album, which kind of made me wonder when you said they kind of picked up steam with their second album, Ed, because I do remember them getting a lot of hype from the first one itself anyway.
That is true.
It's just more magnified, I guess.
I guess so, and I think the songwriting style that they're very much known for now was kind of refined to the point where it's what they were recognized for on the second album. The first album, I'd say a lot of the songwriting is more akin to a lot of other bands, not necessarily in a bad way, but they definitely have their own formula at this point, and I think Joy is the album where they really established that formula and also made a lot more waves in America as opposed to the first album.
Having said that, I didn't feel like I was missing anything or missed a major step from not having heard the second one. This could have been the direct follow-up from Brutalism, in my mind, and I would still feel pretty much exactly right. Bands usually take 3 years to normally put out a next project, and, they put out Joy only a year after the first one, which is very impressive. I feel like I haven't missed a step here, even though I will go back to that eventually. Yeah, I dug this album. A lot of the time I don't really listen to music for the lyrics a lot of the time, unless they start to really connect with me.
Mhm.
They are good. They definitely let Joe Talbot go all crazy on us with the vocals. I feel like he really feels everything he sings about very, very passionately. So they kind of largely work for me. The real highlight here has to be just the band synergy and chemistry, especially the two guitarists and the drummer. The way they play together so well and create these instrumentals is just really, really impressive to me. Pretty much the whole album, they're so consistent and impactful and hard hitting, and I don't have a bad thing to say about this musically, really. It's really, really powerful, like I say.
Something that's interesting about this album that sets it apart from the previous two is definitely more to do with that instrumental synergy, because I think the songs were more carried by the guitars on previous albums, whereas here, I think the drums and the bass play a much bigger role, and this links in with something that I wanted to ask you both about, because I'm kind of interested to see if you picked up on something that was intentional with the album that I think maybe wouldn't have come across had I not already known about it. And this is a quote from their Bandcamp. It says the album was sonically constructed to capture the essence of a hip-hop record. And honestly, I have some mixed feelings on that as a selling point because, yeah, I think without the knowledge that this album took inspiration from those fields, and even knowing that Kenny Beats, popular sort of trap rap producer right now, has programming credits on here, weirdly. The Wu-Tang nod on the song War is maybe in reference to that inspiration as well. I don't know. This just feels like a very loud punk album to me. I don't really feel the hip hop influence, but I wondered if you guys picked up on that maybe.
Not even slightly.
Well, I remember you've telling me that before the album was out when Grounds came out as a single.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, pretty much no. Some of the drumming has a bit more of a solid impact to it, like a hip hop beat in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I listen to a lot of 80s music where gated reverb kind of muffles drum sounds. I feel like rock music in general in the 2010s going into the 2020s has really powerful drumming. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that.
It's less brittle overall than like older punk music.
There's some programming parts to this, like the kind of keyboard of Grounds that might slightly constitute that. I don't know what songs Kenny Beats even contributed more than others, really. So no, not really.
Yeah. I really didn't think it came across in the music, and I found that kind of disappointing. Obviously, I go into all of these albums with, like, you know, no expectations, even having read things in interviews and stuff, but I don't know, I just thought it was kind of weird. If that's what they were going for, I can't speak to their success on that front. But yeah, I liked this one. I think it's easily their weakest album. Like, there's no competition here, really, against Brutalism and Joy, which I'd probably put on about the same level of quality.
Yeah.
But by the same measure, I think they do try something different here. I think they're sticking to the same formula that they really stuck to on Joy, but they're channeling it more into sort of just creating hype music for their political side of the spectrum. Which is very much the side of the spectrum that I am in line with. I don't think these songs are educational in any sense. They're not really going to teach any lessons. And yeah, I understand the criticisms 100%, and I can't really dispute them because there's definitely less nuance here in the lyrical department when compared to their previous two albums. But it just feels to me like it was consciously less of a focus this time around. I get the sense that they constructed these songs around optimizing just the fun and energetic aspects of their music. And I understand how the shift from Joy's more conscious and topical focus to Ultramono's more brittle and primordial approach has lost a lot of fans. But I'm not one of them. I like this album a fair bit.
I can't believe they're losing fans with this. This just sounds like great IDLES music to me.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is just what I want to hear from them, basically. So it's just alien to me that they're losing fans over this, and we don't need to go over why, because you've stated why, but
Yeah.
just my knee-jerk reaction to that is kind of disbelief, but yeah.
I'm not surprised, really. I think it is strange because I feel like their music has kind of always been preaching to the choir in a sense.
Yeah.
And that is going to be to the band's detriment in general for some people. But I've seen loads of people who absolutely loved the last album and just think this is complete trash. And I don't really get it. But yeah, I've never seen any of their music as informative so much as it's just hyping up their beliefs with these progressivist mantras and the ethos of old school punk music. They champion their stances with simple, blunt, upfront lyrics that are a little bit tongue-in-cheek and also impossible to misconstrue, which is a good quality. I think it makes the ideology of the album really accessible and agreeable. I mean, if there's parts of the album that make you cringe, I understand. I think there's a song on here called The Lover, which maybe has some lines that I find a little too goofy, honestly. Particularly catering to the haters eat shit. There's just something about that.
So, what specifically is that song about? Because you said it's hard to misconstrue these songs, and it got to the point where, like, I was thinking some of these lyrics were deceivingly simple, like they had hidden layers to them, but I guess maybe probably not.
I guess it's more just like a sort of anti-violence, anti-stupidity stance.
It just feels a weird one where he's like unapologetic about being an unabashed lover of the world, like confrontational about it, because it does feel kind of heavy and angry for a song that comes with that resolution, but it doesn't matter because the riffs rip hard on it, so...
Oh yeah, instrumentally it's a really fun song. I think it ties in with the opening track War as well, which is a song that channels the fury and energy of, you know, war into an anti-war sentiment.
Yeah.
It basically, you know, equates the fury of that sort of into a kind of self-reflection in a way, and it does it really simply. But again, they've been doing stuff as simple as this since the first album. I don't really get how it's a sudden change of pace for some people.
That's true.
Maybe it doubles down on the formula to the extent that it takes it too far on some tracks like The Lover that we just mentioned, and it results in a loss of impact to me, but that's like my only real major criticism here. They haven't lost me or anything. I think I honestly like every song on this album, which I actually can't say for the previous two albums. This one just feels tighter and more consistent to me, even if the highs aren't as high.
That's fair.
So yeah, Alex, what were some of your favourite tracks?
Kind of has to be Warring Grounds. I mean, they are two songs that like just make you want to replay the album because of how damn aggressive, impactful, powerful, and just satisfying to listen to they are. Rains is probably my favourite.
Oh, man.
It's probably the best song on here from a bass perspective. I love the bass work on that song. I know you like bass a lot too, Ed.
Oh, definitely. But also the chorus on that track. Just the sheer loudness of it is insane.
The way it explodes with the pull on my rain. Yeah, that stuff is good. I mean, you know, I could talk about Carcinogenic as well. Model Village is kind of a funny one. I don't know. The Rains, War, and Grounds are probably my three favourites, but it is consistent. You could make an argument for almost every song here, I think.
What were some of your favourites, Cam?
I think Anxiety was like one of the first songs that really got me. Okay, so this is what they're about. This is their MO, their style, their, you know, the kind of subject matter they get into. Mr. Motivator also had some lyrics that stuck out to me, and I'm sure you can imagine which ones.
Yeah.
I'm not going to repeat them here. But yeah, Anxiety, just like, I don't know, like I was just trying to pick up what kind of vibes I was getting from the band, like who they might have been influenced by and like where they get their politics from, because like on Anxiety there's just like this point where, you know, they'll shout a lyric and then have a little guitar, I don't know if it's necessarily a riff, but, you know, just like, you know, lyric guitar and all that.
Yeah.
Just like with the politics of this song, you know, just got to a point of Anxiety. It just got to a point where every time the guitar intro broke in, I just wanted to scream, "They're trying to build a prison! They're trying to build a prison!"
That's a good comparison point.
Yeah.
System of a Down were another band that had no qualms stating their unhappiness with the government.
Yep.
Yeah, and pushing things as loudly as they possibly could in doing so.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah. And like we can cut this one if it's a really stupid comparison, but did you guys also kind of feel like this is a really hardcore version of something like Manic Street Preachers?
I never really thought of that. I guess there's some Manic songs that have that vibe.
Definitely not lyrically, though.
Yeah.
Because I feel Manic Street Preachers have some of the most, not coded, but kind of like I don't know exactly. They have some of the most like lyrical weird illusions going on, but they're definitely aligned sort of politically kind of
Yeah.
as well. So I can see where you're coming from with there.
Some of that. Like I think I've only heard Holy Bible, so it could be way off.
And
but
it's worth noting that they lost their main songwriter after that album.
Yeah.
So. But I assumed that's what you were comparing it to, though.
yeah. Anyway, so Anxiety, and then two of the other ones that Alex mentioned. I have to give it to Model Village and Carcinogenic.
Nice.
Something about Rains Alex didn't mention that I thought I picked up on. Did you guys hear like a saxophone buried all the way deep in the mix?
Oh yeah, towards the end, I can't remember his name, but they have a guy who they brought on to do that. He's also present on a few other tracks, I think. But yeah, they bring in that distorted sax idea towards the end of Rains that's pretty interesting. Adds a lot to the song.
And that just reinforced the thought that I had from listening to Funhouse. More punk-adjacent music needs saxophones.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. It's true.
Yep, so those 3 or 4, that's what I gotta give it up to.
I guess I'll go over mine then. I actually have a lot of crossover with Alex, so this shouldn't take too long. I also really like War. It's just a primo way to start this album, really. Just going all in, aggressive, with, you know, a simple riff, simple chord progression.
The way it explodes out is a bit like Black Dog by Led Zeppelin to me, just exploding after each vocal part.
Yeah, I really liked that song. This is very much a singles album to me. I think the non-singles are definitely the weaker tracks here, because my other picks are Grounds and Model Village. Grounds for a lot of the same reasons that Alex mentioned. I don't know, I think it varies up their instrumental style. It's probably the biggest sell in terms of the shift to a more instrumental focused style from their previous music, because it has those interesting processed distorted guitars and whatnot, as well as a cool structure. It just sounds like the band members are kind of locked in and they just know how to work with each other at this point, and they're just having fun with it. Lyrically, it's also an interesting song about self-reflection and finding a unity in oneself. You're kind of fighting an internal battle all the time, as well as one with, you know, society, the state of the world.
He kind of sums it up with the I and I unify parts.
Yeah, it's a really simple lyric. And yeah, Model Village is really interesting. And I think that song out of all of these sticks to the formula from their last album the closest, but just, again, goes wild with it, has a lot more fun with it. I thought the song A Hymn was a really odd single choice, but hearing it in album context, surrounded entirely by way more high energy songs, it is a nice change-up that's much easier to appreciate.
Yeah, it's got like his most subdued vocal performance on the album.
Yeah, and it's the longest song as well. It does feel like stretched out and has more of an emphasis on atmosphere than just pummeling you over the head with the instrumental.
I have to agree that Teletext has a place in my heart as well, Joe.
I was going to say, yeah, I think it's one of the weaker songs here overall, and lyrically it is a bit of an outlier to what we were talking about before, in that it's either a lot more vague in what Joe is trying to get across, or there's just not much of a message or theme here beyond an acknowledgement of one's own hierarchy of needs. In this case, a desire for love, and maybe some of the negative feelings of shame that can come from that.
It's sequenced quite interestingly after The Lover. For that.
That's true, actually. I didn't think of that, yeah.
Yeah, because he says, I want to be loved, everybody does, after a song where he unabashedly says, fuck you, I'm a lover. Kind of interesting. I also got like Joy Division vibes from A Hymn. A little bit.
It's a fair comparison, I'd say. Yeah.
I
do
bit.
like the sort of guitar feedback-esque chords that run through it from the beginning. Really cool. Nice drum section as well. But again, I think it's just a little too vague lyrically for me to connect with it in any way. But yeah, that being said, it does have the line, Teletext has a place in my heart, which is just ace. So it's not a complete miss on that front.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to mention was the Daniel Johnston tribute on the closing track. I'm not really a fan of how this track cuts off abruptly as I felt it was building to an even more exciting send-off for the album than what the track already gave us with its pummeling drums and the ascending chord progression here. But I found it interesting because it is mostly an instrumental song. I think the content that is found on the track is mostly pretty great and pushes the sound of the album to its logical conclusion with that bigger instrumental focus. But it does have some lines that are taken from Daniel Johnston's song True Love Will Find You in the End.
Oh, that's nice.
I think it's quite sweet, but because there's not really anything else to go on in the song, it's more just sort of like a small, sweet thematic wrap-up for the album and its themes of unity, but also finding self-worth and confidence.
I think if they covered it straight up, in a similar sort of subdued way like a hymn, maybe it might have been more better received. Like, they did a cover on Joy, didn't they? Cry to Me. But at least they've acknowledged Daniel Johnston.
Yeah, and I don't know, they do recontextualize that lyric into kind of their own messaging without disrespecting him or anything, I feel. So it is nice, but I don't know, there's not a ton to dig into with that track. Again, it's more just about the energy of it.
Just might be the most badass sounding guitar parts to the album.
It's true. Up there with Reigns for sure. But yeah, I don't know. This album is just fun. I think the only song that really kind of falls short in its messaging from a lack of depth is the song with Jenny Beth, Ne touche pas moi, which is broken French. A lot of people have pointed that out.
Yeah, No You Don't Touch Me in French.
Yeah, which, in case you can't guess, is a consent anthem essentially, but it's framed the way I see it from the chorus. This is your dance space, this is my dance space. It's kind of framed as a gig context where, admittedly, I've been to a lot of gigs in my time, and the amount of sexual harassment that happens to women in particular, or just non-males, is insane at gigs.
Yep.
You know? So it's definitely something that needs to be spoken out about. I just think it doesn't really go far enough with it.
No. I'm glad that it exists. It's definitely the message to be given out. Jenny Beth is really, really powerful on it. Definitely better than that Gorillaz song she was on a few years ago.
Oh, she's a much better fit here, for sure.
Well, she's punk spawned, right?
Yeah,
With
yeah,
Savages.
from the Savages, yeah.
I've never listened to them, but, you know, yeah, it sounds good to me, this song.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say about it. The song itself is fun. It has a really catchy old-school indie rock riff on there carrying things, but still the ultra-loud mastering of the rest of the album to give it that energy. A lot of other tracks did kind of feel like IDLES by the numbers for me, but I don't know. There's much worse things to be listening to right now, in my opinion, being a fan of this band.
Yeah.
This is a very uniform sounding album, I gotta say. Like, there's not as much variety here as there was on Joy and Brutalism, but again, it's because they're kind of shooting for this just, you know, overblown energy on each song, and the mastering style really helps that for sure. I don't know if that's Kenny Beats' doing, or I don't know. It's really over-compressed in places, but in a way that I think services the songs really nicely.
If this is their worst album, then I think it's still a pretty alright introduction to the band for someone who's never heard the other two.
Nice.
Obviously, that's what an introduction means, so I think I'm comfortable giving this one a soft 7. Again, it is a lot more, you know, noisier and aggressive than I usually like pretty much anything I listen to. I mean, unless I go into it knowing it's like some kind of hardcore metal or whatever. But it's probably not one I'll be returning to, but I am glad I heard it.
For what it's worth, their previous albums aren't as noisy as this one. They're definitely not as loudly mastered. There's a lot more dynamics to them, I'd say. So maybe we'll enjoy them more on that front.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That sounds about right.
And Alex?
Yeah, this was a fun listen. Definitely good to spend some time with IDLES again after around 3 years. So I'd give this pretty much a 7 as well.
Nice.
Yeah, solid stuff. Kind of cathartic in a way.
Hmm.
Like, every time you listen to it, you feel it's not like an out-of-body experience, but you definitely feel like, yeah, you can definitely get fairly hyped to this music. Definitely very aggressive and anarchic, but yeah, it's definitely very heavy, great rock music at the end of the day. But yeah, I had a fun time with this. Definitely rips hard. I just like saying that.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like I say, this is my least favorite IDLES record, but I still think it sits enough in its own lane from the previous two for me to enjoy it on its own merits. I don't think there's any pretense of it being a radical or revolutionary album, nor do I think IDLES consider themselves to be revolutionaries, in spite of how the UK press and their fan base have kind of painted them into that corner. I'm not envious of them in that regard, but I think they're just saying fuck you to that and just making the most fun album they possibly can. It's not as insightful as their previous work by any means, and lyrically, arguably it does dumb down their style to an extent. But again, it's not really to the record's detriment for me. I think this is just leftist hype music that's designed to be reaffirming, reassuring, and just fun at the end of the day. Even though Joe's vocal delivery is very aggressive, it's not really compromising to me or anything like that, and I feel that way about the instrumentation as well. They're just a really fun band. I see their music as more of an echoed sentiment channeled into that punk style, and while it has its drawbacks, I enjoy it. Just don't expect anything particularly insightful here if you're already into these political ideologies. It's not really going to tell you anything new, but that's not really the point of it, I don't think. Nothing as great as a track like Mother or Colossus, but, you know, I don't think they've necessarily peaked and are gonna just be releasing music less of a lesser quality than that. I just think they were trying something different on this one. On that front, I'm kind of torn between a 6 and a 7, but I'll give it a very, very soft 7, like Alex, for now. Okay, so thanks for joining us on this episode of Busted Speakers. I've been Ed.
Oh yeah, I've been Alex. Forgot who it was.
I don't know why I was doing a different outro
yeah,
from usual, but
I think I've been Alex.
I think I've been Cam.
I hope you were Cam.
If I'm not Cam, who is?
if you enjoyed this review, give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you thought of this album in the comments. I know it's been a very divisive piece of work, and I understand that, but we're always down to discuss it with anyone who's willing to listen to us, for sure, you know?
Yeah.
It's all subjective. You can subscribe to us if you like as well. You can check us out on Twitter at _BustedSpeakers. You can follow Cam on Twitter at SubProspector. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.